Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday night's only special, one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you can get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at their normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery orders or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. This show is also powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. It's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. She's a pioneer of Chicago sports media, dating back to her time with the Score in the 1990s and early 2000s. A diehard White Sox fan and one of the first people in on the John Sheriffin discussion. Julie Swieca, Gannon, welcome to the Au Jus.
Hey, Beef, what's going on?
Nothing. I'm so thrilled to have you on here. Not only because that's great. Not only because I know you're a rabid White Sox fan, much like we are and this audience generally is, but also to talk about your time at the Score. Back when you were pioneering, there weren't a lot of women on sports talk radio, especially not even hosts. So, I'm very interested to have that discussion with you.
Yeah, I was the first female doing a full-time regular sports talk show, and I know there were gals who came before me who were doing some talk show full-time week, and yep. I really was so excited to be getting my big break, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I gave you a little bit of a hard time for being late, but you're not the latest who's ever started this show. Steven Nelson, who does pre and post for the Dodgers and used to be, does some ESPN work as well, and he was on MLB Network. 14 minutes I waited for him, and he did it from
even for keeping me out of the bottom slot.
He still holds the record, and he did it from his backyard, which was kind of interesting. I haven't had anyone do the thing outside. It's a little, but it was good. It was nice. He's a good environment to have Steven there. So,
yeah, right.
So Julia, let's start in the beginning. Let's start back in the Score days. You started the station in 1994. The Score at that time isn't the Score people think of now. It's basically a startup. It's been around for 2 years. I assume that's kind of like original lineup time, right? Too like Tom Scher in the morning, yep. Monsters in the middle of the day, yep. Heavy Fuel Crew. That was it, right? That's the group. Murph probably closing it out.
Don't forget Murph.
Murph closing
it. Cubs fan, but don't forget Murph.
Right. Yes,
yeah, and we were dawn. We were dawn till dusk. So we went off the air when the sun went down. So if there was a game that ended at 10 o'clock at night, you were out of luck. There was no Score on at that point. So once we finally moved to a more powerful transmitter, then we were able to be 24 hours, which is what we know the Score as now.
Right, exactly. Now, those early days like that, you get a job there. What other jobs were you considering? You get out of you went to school at Northwestern. I have to assume that sports talk radio station wasn't like the primo job it might be considered now. Or is this just you were this is cool, I want to get into this? Kind of what was your thought process, Julie, when you're coming out of college and going to do this?
It was definitely the latter. That's where I wanted to be. I'd been listening to the Score since they came on the air 2 years earlier. I knew this was where I wanted to land. Grew up in this area my entire life, and I really just wanted to be in Chicago. And I had a job offer from WJOB in Hammond, Indiana, to do sports updates. And I thought I could be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond. And the Score just had so much potential and upside and room for growth. I took the job doing producing and behind the scenes work and whatever I could do just to get my foot in the door. And then once on air opportunities started to open up, I was there and ready to jump in.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Now you're just there. Question: early impressions. Terry Boris, he is funny as he to me he's one of the funniest people who's ever been on radio. Is he that funny in real life too? Just hanging out.
He's funny and he's sweet, and I don't think people know that side of him because he's Uncle Terry on the air.
Right.
But just was so encouraging and helpful to me early in my career. yeah, he was like an uncle and just took good care of me. And but yes, hilarious. And the early days of the score, I can't even put people into that mindset. If radio stations were fraternities, we were the Delta House.
That makes sense. Thinking of the cast of characters there. So you're starting off there, and what I've read, you did basically every job at the station. From part-time producer to doing beat stuff with Bears and such, news reporter, all the way to on-air talent. How does that ascension occur? Going from like those introductory roles, like the production roles or whatever, and kind of moving on up. And which of the jobs did you enjoy the most on the ascension up to being like on-air talent?
I just made myself available. Ron Gleason was the programming director at the time. And if he needed someone to go cover something and he didn't have a quote unquote reporter available, I would go. And at that point, the host started to put me on the air if it was a breaking news story. I remember getting sent to the United Center when Jeremy Roenick got traded. And
wow.
And I mean, I was just in the right place at the right time. And Jiggets and North put me on the air with them. And the more I did that, the more I kind of earned my stripes. But it was quite a road to getting to be a reporter. I remember being passed over a couple times and just being crushed. But I wasn't ready. And as I did more in the field work and I learned under people like Mike Greenberg, then I kind of earned my stripes a little bit.
That's right. People forget Greeny was just going on a million years ago. Now, when you're going up for those jobs, is it? I assume it's hyper competitive. Not only people in the building, but outside the building, people are wanting to get those jobs. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but because we had some great outside talent come in. But you felt better if you got passed over for somebody who was already, kind of in the clique.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, there were definitely a couple of days where, and I mean, I was lobbying Ron Gleason for on-air shifts. I actually filled in hosting one day. Mike North was out. I sat in with Dan Jiggets, and that kind of showed I could handle being on air, that I could hold my own in the studio. Murph was great at letting me be on the air when I was his producer. He would tell you to open up a microphone. If you had content you wanted to chime in, he would let you chime in. And so those early days when I was kind of like sidekick on the Murph show as a producer, yeah, I got experience being on the air and becoming comfortable behind a microphone.
Okay. That was an opportunity to get a lot of reps. And I know some shows are, they very much want their producers to talk. Other shows don't, kind of want the producers to just produce. So it was always interesting, the score seemed to have a little more of that outlet where they'd let the producers become part of the show. It always added a different flavor for me. I mean, like I was always a big Boers and Bernstein fan, and I liked Abatacola and Goff chiming in on stuff too. It just, to me, it added to it. So that's cool that is a path, and that's it, kind of ability to improve there. So when you're going up these various jobs, which one did you like best, Julie, out of all of them? Did you prefer being on-air talent? Did you like being a reporter going out there? Kind of what did you like best?
I loved being a reporter. That was by far my favorite role because I liked being out at the games and the practices. I liked getting to know the players and the coaches and the managers. I really thrived in that role. And when the time came to make me a full-time host, I missed it. I would try and get out to the games, if it was a day game and then I was working at night, I was trying to get out as much as I could and still be a presence. I thought there was nothing worse than if you sat behind a microphone and you criticized players and you never showed your face in the locker room. I at least was visible. I was there. But I loved reporting. I did so many great stories. Everything from covering Michael Jordan and the Bulls to covering playoff games with the Cubs and Sox to Alonzo Spellman's SWAT team standoff where he barricaded himself in his publicist's house. It's like the middle of winter and we're freezing and we're standing outside with the police while Mike Singletary shows up to talk to Alonzo Spellman. So the variety and doing something different all the time, it was great. But I loved my listeners too. I had a great following and everything was, special in its own way.
That's interesting, Julie. Can you once you're not a reporter anymore full time, but you're just a host? Can you just go ahead and get a credential and get right back in the locker room kind of whenever, or is that usually you had to get permission from the relationships you've built with the various teams? How does that work? I always wonder.
Well, God bless the local teams. They were incredibly supportive, and I had season passes as a reporter, and they did continue that when I was
Nice.
doing my show. But if I had called somebody up and said, "Hey, I want to come out and check out the UIC game tonight" or something, of course they would have let me come out and give them the coverage. So it really helped that I had good relationships with the PR departments in town. There were a lot of very helpful people that gave me the access I had. And one thing people don't realize, the score then versus now, our reporters were field producers. So we were responsible for handing a cell phone to all these big Chicago athletes or out of town athletes because the guys in the studio wanted to talk to them. So not only was I reporting, but I was out there handing a cell phone to, Darren Dalton of the Phillies, who handed it back to me because they didn't go to him quickly enough.
I got testy. He's like, I'm not doing this now.
Oh God, there were so many times I had to
Old Dutch.
cajole them. Please don't hang up. I'll go to you now. But you're out there and you have Jiggets and North's producer asking you, "Hey, can you get Michael Jordan on a cell phone after practice?" Okay.
Sure.
There were some rough ones, but I also, like when I'd be out at Wrigley and they'd have someone singing the seventh inning stretch, the guys would say, "Hey, so and so's singing the stretch today. Can you get them on the air?" I got Elton John on the score.
Goodness.
So,
Wow, now that's a get.
Yes. And I got Bill Cosby on the score, but we don't talk about that one.
Things have changed since then. Yeah.
Right. Chris O'Donnell, like some of these great celebrities who were in town to stretch. And I was the one responsible for putting them on the phone. So it was cool in a sense, but it was also so nerve-wracking. And especially as sports radio became more competitive, you've got different outlets lining up, holding cell phones and waiting for somebody to like just pass the phone on. And then cell phone technology wasn't as good as it is now. So you'd have somebody on the phone with the midday show and the phone would be cutting out. And it's like, oh my God, what do we do? So it was, there were a lot of technical difficulties in those days. They don't do as much of that anymore, but they also, I think, have a lot of help from the PR departments. If they say, "Can we get this player on?" It goes through the PR department. But back then it was just every man or woman for his or herself. And you just had to you had to grovel a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
I was going to say, it sounds like a free-for-all. It sounds like whoever was the best at getting in there and either building a relationship or something was going to be the ones who was going to get it. That's crazy. Like that, I mean, I guess that's the environment you probably want, because if you have a PR group blocking you from getting access, not to name any team in particular that might do that on occasion, that a team that we both love, but just saying, like, having the ability to just jump in there, that seems like it's a lot more fun.
Yes. And, the one that comes to mind that I know you and your listeners will appreciate was Aaron Rowan. Had a great game for the White Sox early in his career. And so we're all dying to get Aaron Rowan on the air after the game. And I remember being in the dugout with Bruce Levine, who I love Bruce. Back then we were at competing radio stations, but we always had a great, healthy respect for each other. And we're kind of like fighting each other for who gets him first. But I mean, it's a healthy competition. But let's say Aaron Rowan only has 10 minutes. Let's say he doesn't have unlimited time.
Right.
How do you make sure you're the one who gets him? So, you had to do a little elbowing out of the other reporters to be able to be the first one in. And like I said, we had a very healthy respect for one another as reporters. But man, I wanted to be the first one to get that guy on the air because the guys back at the station were counting on me.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Get it on live radio. Like it's crazy. Nowadays everything can get clipped, thrown somewhere, whatever. But it's kind of a different environment. Like they're live. They want this person immediately. That's wild, man. That's that's crazy.
I so many stories of cell phones crapping out. It's not even funny. And you'd have guys walking around like trying to get in a better cell. And like I said, sometimes you had guys who just didn't have the patience to sit on hold, and they'd hear the host going to a caller and they'd be like, "This is ridiculous." And I'd just be begging. Wow. I'd grab somebody else's cell phone and call the studio and say, "Would you get him on the air? He's about to walk out." It was so nerve-wracking, but the thrill of just, when that guy got on the air and then he realized how much fun the hosts were and he's having a great time. And I used to line up guests for my Sunday morning baseball show. And I remember getting Jason Kendall of the Pirates. I was a huge fan of his. I tried to get a lot of out-of-town guys on my show. And I just really wanted to talk to Jason Kendall. And so I was in the studio that morning. I'd set it up with Jason. I'd set it up with the Pirates PR people. They put him on the phone while he was like on the bus on his way to the stadium. And he was so dry and so like straight laced and just I felt like, oh my God, this is not going well. And afterward, he like told the PR people how much fun he had and how great it was. And I was like, oh my God, I thought he hated me. And you never know till you get him on the air. But I just remember that feeling of like, oh my God, he was so cool when I introduced myself, and now he's like, clamming up. You had some hits and some misses, and you knew the guys you could go to if you needed a good soundbite or you needed an interview on the fly.
Well, that's what I was going to ask too. Like, were there any players, especially Chicago athletes, who were like extra accommodating, who always could be like, "Hey, if you need something, I'm here for you. Always willing to help out." Who's an example of that in Chicago sports?
Oh my gosh, there were so many that were just such great guys. And since we're White Sox brethren here, I'll give you a couple of the White Sox guys. I loved Kelly Wunsch. Do you remember him?
Yes, of course, yes.
I loved Kelly. He was a good guy. And if you needed somebody to hop on the air to just talk about like an upcoming series or something, he was it. Mike Devereaux, I would sit with him in the locker room while he opened his fan mail. He was just cool to hang out with. Frank Thomas. I love Frank. Frank gets such a bad rap. And I think he's probably gotten better now that he's more visible and on the post-game shows and everything. But Frank Thomas got such a bad rap. And Frank was always so nice to me. And in fact, when I broke my wrist the year they won the World Series, Frank told me to go to rehab. Make sure I went to rehab.
I love it.
Just so many great guys. I rarely had problems with the in-town guys. It tended to be the out-of-town guys who didn't know who you were. They didn't see you on a regular basis. Julio Franco and a bunch of his Cleveland counterparts were talking about me in Spanish while I was standing there. And I knew Julio from the White Sox. And I looked at them and they said, "You don't know Spanish, do you?" I said, "Oh, yes, I do." "Oh, no, you don't." "Okay, well, then keep talking. I know what you're saying." But so the out-of-town guys gave me a little bit rougher ride most of the time. Ozzie Smith, one of the nicest guys I've ever run into.
Oh, nice.
He was extremely helpful. Tony Graffinino was a sweetheart. Tony would loan me CDs that he thought I would like. Mike Sweeney, one of my favorite guys in baseball, also really helpful.
Yeah, Mike Sweeney was a Sox killer too. When he was at KC, he would crush the White Sox.
I wanted to talk to him, and he had such a good personality, and he was kind, and a lot of times, we would talk about like shared faith. Like I'm a practicing Catholic, and he was very outspoken about his beliefs and his religious.
So you're able to connect. That's cool.
So he came up to me one day when I was, in the Royals clubhouse saying hi to him. He came up to me and said, "How's your heart?" And I honestly thought, like, do I have a heart problem I don't know about? And he just meant like, how are you spiritually? And I thought, that's so nice. So really, I mean, you had to deal with the superstars. You had to ask guys like Sammy Sosa to come on the air. It was part of the job. But the guys who were like role players or fringe players or bullpen guys, those were the guys I could always count on, and they made the job a lot easier.
That's incredible. These are amazing stories. I want to circle back to something I heard on a podcast. I listened to an episode of House of L. You were on Lawrence Holmes' podcast a couple years ago. And one of the things you talked about was sort of the lost art form of callers on radio shows. And it's kind of becoming almost an extinct thing. When I was a younger man listening to this, and we're not that far apart in age, Julie. I'm a little bit younger than you are, because I graduated college in 2000. So we're close in age. When I was listening to the score a lot, kind of in that era, there was a lot of callers. There was a lot of caller-driven stuff. And there were regular callers, too. Regular callers that you always contributed to these shows and were effectively like a de facto part of the show. You don't have a lot of that these days. Why do you think sports radio steered away from it so much?
I think part of it was content driven. I think they felt like they could do segments with guests. And if you notice, sports radio, I think, has gone to a lot more regular guests who are newspaper writers, or I don't even know if newspaper is so much of a thing anymore, but writers or, guys who are on the beat with a particular team. They have regular segments on the score. And I think part of that is it's reliable. That guy's going to be on every week at the same time. I love listening to Ozzy on the Score. I mean, that's must listen radio
Yeah.
every Wednesday at 8 a.m. I love Ozzy to pieces. I love what he's going to say. But I think people got away from callers because sometimes they felt like the content, it was hit or miss. You could have great callers or you could have some really awful callers.
Yeah.
And I think for guys like, Terry Boers, when he was either with McNeil or with Bernstein, they were kind of dismissive of callers. And like
Yeah.
that hurt me because the callers were our bread and butter. They were the reason we became a popular sports station. And I had a lot of great callers. I had a lot of people I actually became friends with because they were Score listeners, because they were callers or they were emailing. So I felt bad that we got away from that. I had people on my weekend shows. There were these women who were like in their 80s and they would call to talk baseball.
Yes.
And
Love it.
they would have gotten laughed off anyone else's show. And I gave them a place where they could feel safe. I had a baseball scout, who said he liked that he could listen to my shows in the car with his kids because they were appropriate. So
I wish I abide by that a little more on my side, but we do a lot of cursing. I've been good so far, though, Julie. I haven't been out here cursing, so I'm proud of myself.
And I have to to my guy Lawrence. Lawrence Holmes is just by and far one of the best radio hosts going these days, and I'm wearing a shirt that Lawrence designed. It says "We Still Here," and he designed it in like the late 20-teens, so like 2018, 19. And it was basically for Sox fans to say like, "Hey, don't forget about us." Like everyone was still riding the Cubs World Series wave and everything. And and so I told Lawrence, "Oh, I'm going to wear the shirt on the podcast just because I love it." But
beautiful.
He does such a thorough job. And he gets Sox fans. He really does. A lot of us grew up Sox fans, whether it's Lawrence or Bernstein or myself. A lot of us grew up Sox fans, Mully. So, so I think, when Sox fans get upset about things on the radio, even back then I was hearing, you guys are WCUB. Really? I mean, we love covering both teams. And when the PR people work with you to put their players on the station, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not throwing shade on anyone, but that's your conduit to the fans.
Right.
So, I heard Eric Fetty on the station last week, and I thought he was great. He was a terrific interview. And I thought people who are Sox fans are listening to this interview and going, hey, I like this guy. He's cool. So it's in the team's best interest to kind of foster that relationship.
Right.
But honestly, I wish callers and listeners understood there's no bias. There's nobody on the station who wants the Cubs or Sox to fail.
No, all the teams winning is the best thing for all of them. Absolutely.
Because you don't get called when the team is really good. The Michael Jordan 72-10 Bulls, we could not get phone calls on that team. But if the team is bad and people have something to vent about, that's when people call.
Right.
I know I can count on certain callers who are still stalwarts on the Score. Southside Ron, Stan from Bellwood. These guys have been calling the Score as Sox fans for as long as I can remember, for as long as the station has been on the air. And when I hear them, I'm like, oh yeah, there's one of my guys.
Right.
These guys they're intelligent sports fans. Like I said, I think sometimes callers get a bad rap because people think they don't bring content to the air. I think it's the opposite right now. I think people are so well-read, well-informed. They have so much more media access in terms of seeing things on the internet or on social media. I think the callers do add a lot, and they do reflect the fan base frustration when things are not going well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think that there should be room for it. There should be room for the serendipity too of something you're not expecting popping up in there and just creating content that you're not you maybe weren't ready for. You didn't segment it out. It wasn't in my agenda, but it pops up like that. I think that's great. I think that's real and raw. Now I read that you started the Score in '94. You leave the Score in 2004, and I read that you left because of a little bit of struggle of editorial control over your show. Just quickly, is that true? And then was that sort of a common thing where the powers that be, the PD or whoever, would try to direct the on-air content?
It was not a common thing, and that's why I quit. I'm really happy that you're giving me this opportunity to talk about it because it's something I've kind of kept pretty mum on for the years. But they never told the male hosts what to talk about. They never told the midday guys or the morning guys or the afternoon guys. They never told them what to talk about. And I had a programming director who called up during my commercial break on my nighttime show.
Wow.
And told me what to talk about. And I thought, are you kidding me? So, so I dug in my heels. I said, okay, I'm going to talk about what so-and-so wants me to talk about. And then the next day I resigned. And what really bothered me in the whole, there were a lot of things that bothered me, but there was a guy I was friends with who was a reporter in this town at the time, who is still on air in this town, not as a reporter, but he's still on air. And he went on a show on another station and shredded me, saying,
whoa,
I quit because I didn't want to talk about the Cubs. And I thought, we were friends. How could you throw me under the bus like that? And wow. I never addressed it with him, never confronted him about it. But that perception was out there because he put it out there really hurt because it was so untrue. And you're somebody who I thought was a friend of mine in the reporters clique and just completely misrepresented why I quit. And at the time I was just struggling so much with what do I do next? And was this the right decision? And I really didn't defend myself at the time, which I kind of wish I had. But I just sort of wanted to make the controversy go away. I really didn't want to make it about, you know, oh, I stood up to management or it was a sexist thing or whatever. I just was so heartbroken that a station I loved and a job I loved made me feel like I had no choice but to stand up for myself.
That's absolutely brutal, and that's just insane to hear that. And then the backlash from someone who, like, what do they have to gain for that? What's the problem? I just let you know, Julie, we have a lot of roughnecks in the comments. If you need any, you want to some of the 108 audience to come talk to whoever this person was, you can tell me offline who it is. We'll confront them. We'll let them know.
Yeah, he's not real high on my list these days.
I'd imagine not.
You're right. He really, the only thing he had to gain was that the show he was on where he threw me under the bus was with a bigger fish. And he thought he could gain some favor with his co-host by, oh, I know why she quit. No, you don't. No, you don't. I mean, really, hardly anyone knew why I quit except like my closest friends and family. So, yeah, I try not to wish bad things on people, but I don't root for his success. I'll be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, Julie, was that sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in a way? Because that is a bad thing, but it is also like you said, you just were like, that's enough. I'm done with this. Is there any other things that were like pushing it from that perspective? Was more related to that or other things?
I mean, that was the big one where I really thought like, I'm done. I'm done. You know, whether I made less money than the guys or I worked worse hours than the guys or whatever, I accepted that. I dealt with it. But the fact that somebody could call up and interrupt a show I was hosting. I mean, I'm on the air and you call in a commercial break and you totally threw off the show I had planned, and I had callers on the air on the topic I was going to talk about. I had them on my phone bank and it just derailed me. And at that point I thought, you know what? It's not going to get any better with this programming director. And so I walked away from it. And in hindsight, you know, do I wish I had stayed? I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to have been with the Score longer. I would have liked to have been with the Score when the White Sox won the World Series the next year.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard. You know, I felt I did what was right. But at that point I was under contract to the Score for another 2 years. So I couldn't even go work at another radio station. I had to completely switch directions because I put myself in that position.
No, that's fascinating and unfortunate because you know the reason why I want to have you on is I want to hear your voice about White Sox stuff too, and I think that's missing out there from the broader media sphere. One last question on this topic here: you were a true pioneer in this field, like we talked about at the very onset. You were the first woman doing full-time on-air show. If you were going into this field right now, what would you do that's different or the same? The landscape's changed monstrously, I'm sure, over the last 30-ish years since when you've been starting. What would you do different and what would you do the same now?
The one thing that jumps out at me more than anything is I mean, you had to be a tough cookie. There were not a lot of women in the locker room at the time. You had to be confident. You had to be fearless. And there was a time where I covered a Bears open locker room where a player harassed the crap out of me.
Oh,
and
no.
I remember looking at the other reporters standing around and thinking, like, isn't anybody going to help me? And nobody did. And that's kind of where I said, okay, you know, I guess it's, you know, every man or woman for themselves. I wish I had gone to the PR directors and said, like, hey, you know, this is out of line. This is inappropriate. But I was young. I was new in the business and I was scared. I was intimidated. I was like, oh my gosh, this Bears player is harassing me. And what do I do? And I just, like, I froze. I was so just gobsmacked that this even happened. And, you know, I feel like at the time we weren't that far out from Lisa Olson being harassed by the Patriots. But I thought it was a safe environment, and I thought the other reporters had my back. And the fact that they just all kind of looked at me and shrugged, like, "Hey, you're on your own," it was really crushing. So if I could go back in time, I would tell that Julie Swieca, "Hey, don't put up with this. You know, just because you're 23 and new in the business doesn't mean you have to put up with this." So
right. You don't have to be treated that way, even if you're brand new to doing this. Right? Yeah.
And like I said, you know, most of the local guys were really good with me. I mean, they were not, you know, derogatory or dismissive or sexist or anything. Most of them were really good, but they also saw me around all the time and knew I was legit, that I was doing a job and, you know, not in there to check anybody out. But this Bears player, to this day, like I cringe every time I think of, I can still picture where I was standing in the locker room, however many years ago now, when he made me feel like that.
That's brutal. That's absolutely terrible. So you would push back in some capacity for that. But what about as far as like the path to getting on air? Would you, Julie? Would you have a podcast right now? Would you have would you be a maniac on Twitter if you were starting in this right now? I was kind of wondering about the avenues of the different outlets.
Oh my gosh. I think all the time about, why am I not doing a podcast? Why am I not doing something more on social media? Because I love talking sports and because I love interacting with other fans. That's why I was so excited when you gave me the chance to come on your podcast tonight. I'm like, this is going to be great.
You're excited. I'm the one excited. I'm the excited one here, Julie. All right. Hate to steal that from you, but I've been very excited. But tell my wife, I can't wait for this episode. This is going to be so much fun. And it absolutely has been so far. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing a lot of this stuff with me. Now you leave sports talk and you're going to go try something different. So you leave the Score, you become a pastry chef. How does this come about? Do you go to culinary school? Do you just you have innate knowledge and skills and you just start, chipping away? How does this work? How do you just say, forget that career, I'm doing this career now?
Yeah, my mom was like, what are you thinking? You have a Northwestern degree. Yeah.
Yes.
She didn't quite put it like that, but yeah, she was.
It's unfelt.
But I, like I said, I couldn't work in radio because I was still under contract, and I really was having a hard time getting my foot in the door doing TV, which I had done just as a guest on different stations, but I couldn't get in the door doing anything full time on TV. So I had to kind of regroup and figure out what next. I mean, I was calling teams asking if they needed help with their sports information departments for the local college teams. I was really, at that point, I wish there had been Twitter or, social media or whatever, because I feel like I could have done something else that wouldn't have conflicted with my being under contract. By the time, right. I really had to think, okay, I have to go a totally different direction. And I always loved baking. And so I enrolled in cooking school. I went for a year. I got my degree, and I loved it. I really did. I, to this day, still have such fond memories of that year I was in cooking school because I wanted to be there. I mean, I got straight A's because it was my new career. I couldn't afford to just, do it on a whim. It was a
right.
whole change of life for me. And my ultimate goal, and I've got a whole bunch of ideas in the hopper if anyone ever wants to tap into them. But my goal is to combine my sports career and my culinary career. And It's going to happen. Someday it will happen. And that would kind of be the icing on the cake, so to speak.
Nice way to tie that in. Now, what does an average day of a pastry chef look like? Because I only know a pastry chef as of sort of like if you go to a high-end restaurant, a lot of times they'll have a pastry chef making the desserts or whatever, and so that's the only where I'm aware of this sort of thing. But what does your daily look like, Julie? What is it? What does it encompass?
Well, right now my days are getting shoulder physical therapy because I had shoulder surgery a few months ago.
Oh goodness!
So I'm not in the pastry kitchen, but I do still
just too many cookies. You had to get the rotator cuff. Too many cookies.
Too much whisking, too much mixing.
That's right.
So I at the time, that's where I'm at this point in my career. But for a pastry chef, you start early most of the time. So I always worked like 6 to 3 or 6 to 4. You're out in the middle of the day, which was great. But I loved starting early because you have to get all the baking done. If you have to bake cookies for a cafe or you have to bake desserts for a restaurant, I mean, I got stuff done early. And I've worked in hotels and restaurants and country clubs and retirement communities and you name it. I mean, I've worked a lot of roles in my culinary field, which is kind of harkening back to my score days where I worked a lot of roles. And I've taken something from each one. I feel like each one has had benefits and advantages. And again, I could look back at should I have left the score, but I think, well, if I'd left the score, I might not have gotten some of the opportunities I've had in this field. Right. I might not have met my husband if I were still working at the score. Who knows? But the fact that I was featured on a national TV show last year for my gingerbread village, which was a 75-piece gingerbread village, I thought, oh my God, I've made it now because yes. Like getting recognized somewhere pretty big. So I could write a book someday, and just the stories I have from both sides of my career, just I love every one of them, even the rough ones, even. And I feel like my life's pretty good.
Now, Julie, how much I noticed, in the job in media, you use creativity a lot, and then how much in the pastry chef vocation are you using creativity, or how much is just like the order is they need X, Y, Z, and you just make that? How much is like left to you to be creative and allows you to do some stuff?
I lost you there for a second.
Sorry. Yeah, no. Sorry about that. Just quickly, like on creativity, I noticed you used creativity a ton at the score, creating content, figuring out ways to get people on the phone, whatever. As a pastry chef, are you allowed to use that creativity there as well? Or is it like, this restaurant needs this specific order, this hotel needs this specific order? How does that work?
There's a lot of creativity involved, which I love. Some of my favorite pastry jobs have been where I've been creating menus, been creating desserts.
Oh, nice.
Even doing cakes for friends and family. I love creating stuff. I love when someone says, oh, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Take it and run with it. And then I come up with something that I just think is the bomb. And nice. So there is a lot of creativity. There are certain places you work where they say, like, this is the recipe we've always used for banana pudding. We want you to follow it. And you say, oh, okay. But a lot of places I've been able to bring in either my buttercream recipe or my apple pie recipe, or, something that's nice. Signature to me. And nobody's ever said like, oh, go back to the way we were doing it. Ours was so much better. So
that's good. I love it.
There's that autonomy where I think like, gosh, if I had my own bakery or I had my own shop or whatever, you would be in charge. You have all the creative control. Right. So I do like that part of it. And that was one of the things I did like when I was doing the talk show at the score was it was all my control. It was all right. Like what I wanted to talk about and, the guests I wanted on, the topics I wanted. I always had great producers. Jason Goff was my producer for my nighttime show.
Nice.
He was terrific. I haven't had a chance to connect with him, but I always respond to him on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, because I'm so proud of how far he's come. Because this was the guy who was playing Beyonce in and out of breaks for me, and now he's Mr. NBA and Chicago Bulls.
Right, so, pre and post game show guy. Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Done a great job. So it really the creative control is something I always loved, and maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak. But that to me kind of taps into just my creative side, that I'm somebody who's always thinking outside the box and what can I do that's different. And I honestly, I always want to share my baking with people. I tend to bring treats places a lot. My neighbors absolutely love me because I'm like, hey, I have extra of this. Do you want some? And it works out great because I love sharing that with people. And I think I was kind of that way in sports too. I love sharing something people didn't know. They didn't know this about a particular player. And I shared it with them, and it was different than the everyday reporting on that player. So yeah, I like to think I've always been a very creative sort and a little outside the box.
I love it. Now, I just want to let you know, fair enough, the comments. Mailman Jack says, here comes the cookie grift. He thinks that I'm trying to get free cookies. I am not. I love cookies, but I'm not trying to get free cookie. I love pie as well. Not just throwing that out there, but I'm not trying to get any free stuff, Julie. All right, I just want, the interview is the interview is the interview, okay? Just saying it that way. The commenters are jerks sometimes. They're trying to get me here.
Okay, now since you didn't put me on to ask for cookies, then it's okay if I send you cookies because then it's just me wanting to share them with you. So,
That's right. That's right. No matter what Mailman Jack says. I hate to bring down.
He's jealous. That's all.
He's just jealous. That's right. I hate to bring the mood down, Julie, but I do want to talk some White Sox because I know you're a big White Sox fan, much as I am, and I want to get your thoughts on a few different things. A hot topic in Sox Twitter and every Sox media has been about John Sheriffin. You were one of the first people I saw, fans. I'll bifurcate this because there are media people who have been critical of John, but I think there's some incentives there, some different things going on there that are separate from being just a normal fan viewing him. And through your fan lens, you were pretty critical of John kind of right out of the gate here, one of the first ones. So what is it with him right now? How are you feeling about his performance? You know, lay it on me here because you're one of the first ones I saw as like actual fans, like getting down on John. And now more people are coming to your side of being a little like, well, it's not as good as we'd like it to be. Oh, sorry, you cut for a second there.
Yeah, I lost you there for a second. I actually was so supportive when he came to town. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted him to be good. I didn't know his body of work. And I really wanted him to step into Jason Benetti's shoes, which nobody can really do, but to not have the fan base criticizing him, to have the fan base say like, hey, this guy's pretty good. I'm glad he's one of ours. And so I've never had a personal agenda. I actually feel bad for him with some of the criticism, except that he hasn't responded to it well, which he could handle it better. He could help his cause a lot better if he weren't maybe so thin-skinned about it. I mean, in this town, you have to be able to take the criticism. Believe me, I could tell him, I could take him out for a beer and tell him 100 stories about people who would leave me voicemails at the Score ripping me or whatever. And you can't take it all personally. You have to realize like everyone's got their opinion. The Veek thing, that's kind of what set me over the edge when I posted it, because I thought, oh my gosh, you don't have to know this current team to know. You have to know Sox history if you're going to be the Sox play-by-play guy.
Right.
And this guy was not just a Sox figure; he was a baseball figure. And the fact that he didn't know it, and that maybe somebody said to him in the commercial break, like, John, you know, it's Vec and not Veek. He could have come back and played it off and been funny about it. He could have been like, oh my God, I totally had a brain cramp and I was reading the prompter and blah, blah. He could have played it off, whether how it was pronounced or not. And everybody would have been like, oh yeah, it happens, whatever. Instead, the fact that he didn't address it and then it just kind of spiraled out of control, that everyone was piling on. Like I said, I felt kind of bad that I was one of the first people to call attention to it, but I also felt like, come on, dude. I mean, you're in this market. You're not doing single A baseball in the South somewhere. You're doing Major League Baseball in the third largest media market in the country. Be better. And I also, I hate the South Side stand-up. I hate it. It's chalkboard. Can't stand it. But, you know, if that's his call, fine. You know, that's your thing. I don't think it resonates with the fan base very well. And there are people who defend him. There are people who think like it's cool and it's funny and whatever. I think he's finding his footing a little bit better. And I actually love his positivity. I am a complete optimist, glass is half full.
Yep.
I love his optimism and his positivity. It's some of the other corny stuff that I wish he'd kind of just tone down a little bit. Like, you don't have to try so hard. You don't have to be such a cornball. And you've got Stone sitting next to you. Steve Stone is like God's gift to color commentators. You've got him sitting next to you. Let him do some of the heavy lifting while you're getting your feet wet and figuring out this role. And hopefully, if he sticks around, if he's here for another few years or however long, hopefully we see him evolve and get better at his job. And again, maybe embrace it a little bit. I loved when he went out to the tailgates on opening day. I thought, oh my, what a great way to win over the fan base. I loved that. And I kind of wish those feelings I had that first day when I saw like how he connected with the fan base, I wish that still resonated, because I feel like he's drawn a line in the sand and said, you don't like me, screw you. And I really think if Sox fans and John Schriffen could get along great, we'd all be happy, because we all want the same thing, and that's the Sox to win and a good Sox broadcast to watch.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And Julie, your criticism is absolutely fair. One of the most fair ones I've heard, I think, out of anyone that I've heard talk about this. And I'm with you about, I like the positivity. I don't mind that he's excitable on big plays like that. I know I've heard a little bit of criticism like that. For me, it's an entertainment product. I don't mind that. But you do bring up a great point about the Vec Veek thing is part of a kind of this other issue where he is not, like, a lot of the people that get these jobs are baseball lifers, right? Yeah. And they get in those spots and they know so much baseball stuff because they've been baseball nerds the whole time. He's not that. And so, like, these gaffes have the potential of creeping up until he gets kind of indoctrinated in the culture of baseball, not even just White Sox culture. So, like, yeah, I mean, it's a problem. I agree with you. I hope he gets better. I hope he improves. You're not going to fill Jason's humongous shoes. I mean, Jason connected with the audience, and he's a different guy. They're just different guys. Like, I was someone who won Sox Math a bunch of times, and Jason put my goofy hot tub videos on the TV. Like, that's a weird way to connect with someone, but it is pretty cool. Like, so like he had his way, and this other guy will have his other way. So I'm interested to see. I hope there's a continued evolution here. But yeah, a very fair criticism. Now I want to jump off of.
Can I just ask you real quick?
Yeah.
When Jason was in the booth, did you ever win Sox Math?
I won 9 times. I won 9 times.
I've won.
How many times?
0.
I won. I won, and I did a couple. They were letting us do videos for a while, and I did a video in my cold tub, and I talked about how it's good for men of a certain age, and I said, right, Stoney, and like during the podcast. So like, still my favorite thing that I've done Sox related. Just giving a little poke to the Stone Pony there. So, but yeah, I love Sox Math, and I love the only thing I would have changed about Sox Math is I would have put a little more pop culture in it. And make it less of a contest of like who could search baseball reference fastest. I would have made it sort of been you have a broader spectrum of winners like that, because that would have been more fun to me. But otherwise, I loved it. And I liked the way Jason engaged the fan base. He was great at that. Absolutely. But
so sad that the Sox didn't like the way or certain people in the organization didn't like his broadcast style, because I thought it was great. I thought it was hilarious. And when you had a team that maybe wasn't going so well, you'd still tune in to watch Jason and Stoney, because their comedic timing was so spot on. And Stone has had that, everywhere he's been, that dry sense of humor, that one-liner, pause for a beat. And I think Stone is so good at what he does that it made it worth tuning in. And even now, I tune in because I love Steve Stone. I tune in to the pre and post game show, not because the team's great, but because I love Chuck Garfien and Ozzy and Frank and Scott Podsednik and the whole gang of them. Yeah. You tune in because the personalities are people you connect with. And so again, going back to Schriffen versus Benetti, nobody expected him to be Jason Benetti.
No.
Jason Benetti is a unicorn. But the fact that he bristled at it, like, no, embrace it. Figure out why the fans have criticism and work with it. And if you feel like this is my home run call and too bad for all of you, well, all right, that's fine. I respect that. He's had some calls where I thought they were great. He had one the other day about Gavin Sheets where he was like, Gavin Sheets, my man. And I thought that was kind of funny. Like, it made me laugh. It doesn't have to be Hawk Harrelson. It doesn't have to be Jason Benetti. be you and just don't be corny. Let the moment take over. The having to have like a strikeout call or a home run call or a we won the game call, that's overrated. Just be you, and people will like you. Hopefully.
I love it. I love it. I hope he takes your advice, Julie. I agree with that because I think that would probably help him a little bit. Now, with regards to the team's bad right now, and there's no way to really shape this or anything. So far, in the Chris Getz regime as GM, you seeing any glimmers of hope right now, Julie?
No. And I feel so bad saying that because I like Chris Getz. I actually have pictures from an autograph signing with Chris Getz I went to when he was a player.
Okay.
I like him as a human being. I really think, he's young, he's inexperienced. The only way you get experience is to be on the job.
Right.
But I also think there's a lot going on above him that he just doesn't have control over. He doesn't have a big enough say. And I'm gonna throw this out there. I actually have been one of Jerry Reinsdorf's biggest fans for a good chunk of my Sox fandom. Many, many years ago when I was at the Score, Chicago Magazine did a feature on me, and they wanted the photo shoot to be at Wrigley. They wanted me to be in the Wrigley scoreboard, and I said, can we do it at the Sox Park? And yeah, I was tactful about it. I didn't say like, oh, hell no, are you crazy?
Right.
But I asked the Sox if I could do it in the Sox dugout or scoreboard, whatever. Could I do it somewhere at the Sox Park? And the Sox said yes. And the photo shoot went great. And Jerry Reinsdorf sent me a handwritten note afterwards saying, thank you for choosing our ballpark for the photo shoot.
Wow.
And,
Holy moly.
I know. Oh, it was so cool.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah, I've introduced him to my husband at games, and he's, signed my husband's ticket stub for him and everything. I do think, like, at heart, I have more good thoughts of Jerry than bad. But the last year or two, I feel so disappointed in the way he's let down this fan base that is so passionate and so badly wants to root for this team, and to dig in your heels and say like, no, Tony La Russa's my guy, or Pedro Grifol is my guy, whatever, should just be almost not argumentative, but just you're almost doing it to spite your fans. When you say, oh, you guys want Tony La Russa fired, we're actually going to keep him even longer. Like, you can't.
Right, like he's putting a thumb in our eye, that
Right.
sort of thing, a little bit.
And I'm so sad when I hear this talk about like trading Garrett Crochet and trading Luis Robert and whomever. Like, you have to build around somebody. You can't trade everyone. You cannot build around Martin Maldonado. Yeah, we'll get it.
We'll get to him in a minute.
but I mean, you can't scrap everybody. You've already traded, Chris Sale and Dylan Cease, and let Carlos Rodon go and blah blah blah. You've already gotten rid of these guys. Who, by the way, if you look at the top 5 in strikeouts, as of the other day, 3 of the top 5 were Sox adjacent. They either had Sox ties or they're Garrett Crochet and they're on the Sox.
Right.
And I think Ethan Katz does a pretty good job. So I would have liked to have seen, if you kept some of these guys, build with them. I think you can't underestimate how the injuries have decimated them. I was at Dick's Sporting Goods today, and I saw Sox jerseys. I know, shocking. They actually did have some Sox jerseys.
I don't believe it.
I'm that person. I look to see like if a store has more Cubs stuff than Sox stuff. I feel offended.
You and me both.
I do know people who have turned around Cubs stuff at a Target store. But when I'm at Dick's Sporting Goods today and I see the jerseys were Luis Robert Jr. and Yoan Moncada. And I'm like, oh my God, these guys are never even healthy. And you can't blame them. Who else are they going to have jerseys of,
Right.
Andrew Benintendi? You can't.
No.
There's nobody for them to really market if you're Dick's Sporting Goods. But I thought, well, I wouldn't buy either one of these jerseys for $175. And every time in the last 4 or 5 years I wanted to get a jersey, I thought, I'm going to jinx it. That guy's going to be traded. And literally the last 2 or 3 I've considered, Lucas Giolito, Liam Hendricks. I'm afraid to invest in a Sox jersey. So
it's not you, it's them, Julie. I promise. It's them. It's not you. You're not the one. They're the ones doing this to these poor guys. It's not us.
Exactly. So I have to ask, for you and our fellow Sox fans, I have a lot of Sox shirts. I know that's not a shock.
Yep.
But when the Sox are going bad, I'm embarrassed to wear them in public.
Like, I don't want to be that tribe.
You loser. You're a Sox fan. And it's not that I've sold out my fandom, but it is kind of embarrassing when they've lost 14 in a row and you're like, yay, go White Sox, and you wear your shirt to the store. So when they won 2 in a row, I'm like, okay, I can wear a Sox shirt.
We're back.
Like, my wardrobe got wiped out by the team being bad. I can't wear this tank top.
Brutal.
I want to be able to go out in public with pride and be like, yep, this is team South Side or die. And it's kind of hard when your team is so embarrassingly bad.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. Now, based on your earlier comments, I'm going to put you firmly in the camp that I'm in. I don't think the White Sox should trade Luis Robert or Garrett Crochet. Are you of that same mind that they have enough team control? They should be here. They should be part of the next group that's good, and then you figure it out from there. Whether or not you're going to extend these guys or what you're going to do, but let's keep them around. Is that where you're at with this?
100%. You and I are simpatico on this. Extra cookies for you, Beef.
Wow, that sounds great.
I completely, you have to keep somebody. Yohan Moncada is one where I'm like, oh my God, how much longer do we have this guy under contract? Because
not much.
He's never healthy. Great, you made a cute music video, but what have you done on the field in the last few years? And I love Eloy. I love the hi mom and everything. I met Luis Robert at an autograph signing, and it's when he was out with the groin injury a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And he was just so sweet and adorable. I asked him in Spanish how he was feeling, and he smiled and, gave me an answer. And I honestly, I go back to, I don't have a vendetta against any of these guys. I root for them.
Right.
I want them to be good players. I like that they seem to be nice guys. Martin Maldonado might be the nicest guy in the world. I don't know, but I just hate seeing him in my team's lineup every night.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's an entertainment product, and he don't entertain us. So that's the way I look at it with him. I want to get to this. So I want this could be the last thing. And you were a little apprehensive, but I said we should talk about this. So White Sox fan voting Martin Maldonado for the All-Star team. Your thoughts, Julie?
That's my thought right there. I get the point. I get what point Sox fans are trying to make. I think it makes our fandom look bad. And, sometimes we don't need help doing that. Sometimes
we're well on our way most times.
The Legues beating up, first base coaches and stuff, and our fan base looks bad nationally. I have to think there are people around the nation who, if they start to get wind of this, would be like, what are these yahoos in Chicago doing? And if I were Martin Maldonado, I'd be so embarrassed. Can you imagine if you show up at the All-Star break and everyone's looking for Sylvie Perez and you walk in? It's like, what point are you trying to make? You're trying to point out that you don't like your management or you don't like your owner or whatever. There's other ways to do it, but this to me just seems so I don't want to offend anybody because, like I said, I love White Sox Twitter. I love the Sox fan base, but it seems just kind of childish.
Agreed.
I get the point you're trying to make, but maybe this isn't the best way to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's dumb, and I'm pretty good about. I don't really pile on people if I think that they got a dumb idea or a dumb thought or whatever. I'm pretty, I'm generally positive. Like you're talking about positive attitude, but I saw all this and I'm like, this is really dumb. I don't want no part of this. I'm just letting it go, but I'm not saying nothing. I'm like, this is too dumb for me. I'm not in.
I'm so glad you said we could talk about it tonight. And did you notice our guy John Schriffen referenced it the other day? Because
I heard. I was at the game. I didn't actually hear it, but
So on Saturday, he made some comment about, Sox fans have a vote Maldi campaign going, blah, blah, blah. And then people just ripped him all over Twitter saying, does he not know this is a joke? And does he not know? And then yesterday he doubled down and said, yeah, I know what it's about. He hears the criticism. He doesn't address it face to face, but he addresses it in the broadcast where he heard something or read something that was critical. So he doubled down and said oh yeah, I know why they're doing it. So apparently, word got back to him that people were saying does he not get this? He didn't elaborate on the broadcast because it's still the Sox broadcast and he's, a good Sox employee. Yeah,
you got to be a steward of the brand. I mean, you can't be dunking on these guys like this.
Right. But the fact that he referenced it, it's A, he's aware of the initial campaign, and B, he's aware of the criticism that people thought he didn't know what the campaign was about. Again, I think Sox fans can be so deliciously snarky and funny and witty, and there's so many great things. I mean, my husband will laugh because we're watching a game and I'm sitting there on Twitter half the time because I'm like, yeah, I want to see what the other Sox fans are saying, and I want to see what Scott Merkin is saying in the press box, and blah blah blah. I'm like completely engaged in social media when I'm watching a game, and it's because there's so much great content. There's so many great people to follow, and you know, for you and guys like Chorizy E and White Sox Mom, who I would love to meet someday. Like these people, I feel like, oh, these are my peeps. These are my kinship in Sox misery, which is so sad to see. But
yeah, the humor is what's always protected us. We it gets bad, but then we mess around. We have jokes, and then it keeps us, from feeling too bad about all this stuff. Of course,
exactly. And I can promise you, if I got to a game anytime in the near future, which is just rough because I'm like an hour and a half away from the ballpark, but I would be willing to bring Sox cookies to Section 108.
You come down. We'll have tickets for you. We'll get the tickets all lined up. If you bring cookies, let's go. Let's do it. Well, I can't wait. This would be great.
I am in. I would love to. I always feel like the 108 group is like this insider clique that I'm just not cool enough to be a part of. So I'm like, oh, maybe one day if I'm at a game, I could just go introduce myself.
The 108 is like the Wu-Tang. They're for the people. It's for everyone. That's
like I said, I have so much love and respect for Sox fans on social media because I forgot White Sox Mike, who I know is like really big in the Sox community. I think some of his stuff is great.
He's huge. Yep.
A pretty positive guy. I like that about him.
Yeah, he's a nice kid. We've interacted a bunch. We even had him on something a long time ago, and yeah, he's a really nice kid. I like him a lot. So
it's our people. I mean, come on, this is our group, and there's the Sox fan, who doesn't like the Cubs or doesn't like Cubs fans or whatever. We have all got that part of us. But I'm also married to a diehard Cubs fan. We have a mixed marriage. We had a Cubs Sox wedding reception.
Oh,
no lie, Scouts honor.
Holy moly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can coexist with Cubs fans. Were we hating each other when the Cubs were in the World Series? Kind of, a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think
that'd be tough.
There is that, us versus them mentality that, we close ranks because, how many times can you hear, I'm sorry, I flip and hate the Go Cubs Go song. And my husband and I bicker about this a lot. But when Shriffen said something the other day about, I have to hear that song again, Beef, I laughed out loud. I was like, yeah, that's it, John Shriffen. That was one of those moments where I would have high-fived him if I had been there. Because we connected on that. And I'm like, God, I hate that song. Mind you, I don't hate every Cubs song, but that one just makes my skin crawl. So, yeah.
It's especially bad.
Because we're a mixed marriage, we flip back and forth between the games, or we'll be watching in different rooms of the house. Our sports basement has 2 TVs. We could have them both on at the same time, but we both want the volume up. So
you need separate spaces to get this knocked out. Yes.
Yesterday, I was out on the patio doing staining furniture, and I had the TV out there, and I was watching the Sox out on the patio so that he could watch the Cubs inside. But I mean, I'm flipping back and forth, and we're trying to keep peace in the household and everything. And there are things I love. Yeah, I think Pat Hughes is so good. I'm such a
I would agree with that. Yeah.
My husband absolutely hates Len Casper, dead to him, because he left the Cubs for the Sox.
That's fair. That's fair.
There's something with that Cubs Sox rivalry. Whenever people would say, "Oh my gosh, what if they were ever in the World Series at the same time?" I'm like, the city would blow up. And
it would be chaos. It would be chaos every game.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I honestly, I don't. That year that the Cubs were in the World Series, I tried to be as supportive as I could till it got to, oh my God, they just won, and my husband was like running around the house screaming and trash talking, and I was like, oh God, make it stop. It's good nature. We've both seen a World Series in our lifetimes. We both want our team to be the next one to get back. Please, Chris Gatz and Jerry Reinsdorf, please don't make me suffer being the second team in my household for much longer.
I love that plea to White Sox management. I'm not sure that they'll listen too well, Julie, but I hope that they do. So, but I want to thank you for sharing your story of being a pioneer in Chicago sports media, your career change, your thoughts on John Schriffen, Chris Getz, trades, and absolutely at the end, the Martin Maldonado. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Just the fact that if anyone wants to help me with some of my ideas about combining sports and cooking, I have 2 or 3 really good ideas in the pipeline. Lawrence Holmes, I've referenced Lawrence a couple times. He is trying to help me get my foot in the door with the Bears because I developed a bear claw recipe that I think would be great for Soldier Field.
Awesome.
Things like that where I can like combine my love of our sports teams and my love of baking. I've got ideas, and if anybody wants to help me get them out there, I'm always looking for somebody who will at least entertain the idea. And you always get treats out of it. If I meet with you and we discuss something, I never come empty-handed. I always bring some sort of treat. So if people want to reach out to me, like I said, I'm more than happy to respond to people. And I absolutely love that social media gives us a chance to all get to know each other like this. So.
Yeah, the town square, basically.
Talk to you
on Twitter or X, that's at Swieca_Julie. If you want to get at her about some of these ideas, you want to get back in there. Julie, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. This has been an absolute thrill for me.
I've loved it. I'm so honored to be on with you. And I've seen like texts coming through from friends of mine saying, like, I'm watching you on YouTube right now. So and people who aren't even Sox fans, they're like my friend Jen, who's a Giants fan out in San Francisco. She's watching.
Beautiful.
You are spreading the love and getting the name out there, the word out there about your au jus cast. And so
thank you.
And anytime you need anything, reach out. And let's make that 108 cookie thing happen. I'm in.
You got it. I'm going to take you up on both of these. If I need anything, White Sox content stuff, and also the cookies. Sounds great. Julie, take care. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. That was Julie Swieca. That was outstanding. That was even better than I thought it would be. Next week's guest, actually, I'm going to have Peter Fonseca, a.k.a. Baloney from the Chicago Sports Bums, on. It's going to be a bit of a role reversal next week. He's going to interview me. It's my birthday. I'll turn 46 next Monday. I'm not a big birthday guy, but I thought I'll do something self-indulgent. I'll have Peter on to interview me, and we'll just chop it up a little bit. So that's what you have to look forward to next week. Thanks to Punky's Pizza and Pasta and all the 108 family who was up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments. We'll see you on Thursday night, 108 podcast. I love all of you. Bye.